The 50th Annual World Economic Forum in the Swiss resort town of Davos has kicked off with fiery speeches from the event's headliners, including US President Donald Trump and teen climate activist Greta Thunberg. Trump went first, and in his keynote speech, he praised his country's economic comeback, attributing it to his America First policies. He said the US was in the midst of an economic boom and urged business leaders to invest in American enterprise. Trump also called the trade deal with China a precedent for what trade agreements would look like in the 21st century, and announced that there was more to come in terms of reversing the damaging 18-month-long trade war.
China will spend an additional $200 billion over 2 years on American services, agriculture and energy, and manufactured goods. So we'll be taking in excess of $200 billion, could be closer to $300 billion when it finishes. But these achievements would not have been possible without the implementation of tariffs, which we had to use, and we're using them on others too. And that is why most of our tariffs on China will remain in place during the Phase 2 negotiations. For the most part, the tariffs have been left, and we're being paid billions and billions of dollars a year as a country.
Well, for more on Trump's comments at Davos, let's speak to Shane Hahm, who's been following the summit for us. Good to have you with us, Shane. Now, US President Donald Trump pulled out of Davos last year because of a US government shutdown there. So a lot of people were eagerly awaiting his appearance this year. Tell us more about what he had to say.
Yeah, this was his first appearance on the international stage since impeachment proceedings began over in the U.S. Congress. But his speech largely focused mainly on the economy, as many expected here. The only difference here is that the attendees probably really expected or knew what to expect from his speech, and he didn't really stray from his America First policies and really touted his economic achievements over the past 3 years, saying that America is still open for business. But back to his economic achievements, he focused on the growth and the jobs, as well as wage growth and the stock market and how it's performed during his administration. So if anything, the reception that he received from his speech is probably what has changed since his last appearance here in Davos back in 2018.
And that's right. We have to remember that the audience there are full of the rich and powerful. A lot of the business leaders there have actually benefited from his corporate tax cuts there. So I guess he's preaching to the converted in that sense. But he also claimed credit for America's economic recovery after the Great Recession that happened there, something that I think many analysts have attributed to Barack Obama. So tell us more about what he said about how he claimed to have fixed the economy.
Precisely. He focused a lot on the job growth as well as unemployment figures, how they're, depending on the demographic, how they're at multi-decade lows or all-time lows. And many do attribute this to his previous predecessor, the Barack Obama administration. Back when he was campaigning, before he became president, he would argue that all these numbers were fake news, but then all of a sudden critics would say now that he's in office that they're real news now. But again, he did focus on a lot of the economic policies and the output, GDP figures as well, and that's what he largely focused on, as opposed to issues like the environment, which he did mention, but it was largely focused on the economy and his achievements there. Okay,
now did he give any clues as to how the next stage of trade negotiations with China are going? We know that this summit comes soon after Beijing and Washington signed that highly anticipated Phase 1 agreement. Do we know anything about the next stage?
Well, as you heard just a moment there, the president speaking that throughout this Phase 1 and with these tariffs, China will be paying an additional $200 billion, if not $300 billion more for agricultural goods and other sectors as well. He did mention that tariffs will remain as Phase 2 negotiations are ongoing. But we all know that President Trump was not a fan of these existing trade deals. He mentioned that another trade deal, the USMCA, is something that he has praised under his leadership, as well as a new trade deal that was forged with Japan and a renegotiated trade deal with South Korea over the past couple of years, as well looking forward in terms of a possible trade deal with the United Kingdom with Brexit upcoming. So he didn't give too much as to what analysts could expect for a phase 2 with China. So that's something that we'll have to keep a close eye on. It remains to be seen.
Okay, Shane Hahm, we'll have to leave it there. Stay warm, and thank you so much for that update.